Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Final Fantasy XVI podcast. It's been a long time in the making, but we finally played enough of this game to give our overall thoughts. My name is Renegade Operative, and I would like to introduce the rest of the panel. So first we have Andre.
Hola, what's up, everyone? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Final Fantasy 16 is actually here. Definitely one of my most anticipated games in the last, probably I want to say 3 or 4 years. Played through it, absolutely loved it. Got the platinum. Not wait to talk about this game with you all. It's gonna be a blast.
Next up is Justin.
This is my Ben Star impression. How's it feel? Look at me fly. I'll go on Twitter.
Okay.
Get over here, Ifrit, you bitch. Hashtag challenge. Sent. Did I do it right?
That guy on, well, now he's just a blinding and flash face because I saw that and I was just laughing for like 5 straight minutes.
Oh, he loves those memes. He's saying keep him coming. He's all for it.
Yeah, he's a great voice actor. I really like his Clive voice and how he approaches things. But how are you, Justin?
Doing good.
Next up, we have Slash.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 16, personally, one of my favorite franchises, and I'm just glad to be talking about the newest entry on a public platform, so we'll see where this goes.
And last but not least, we have Shug.
No, I'm pretty excited for talking about this game finally, since we delayed it, twice already, so I think it's finally time that we get this over with.
Yeah, this is a long ass RPG, so we needed to delay it to get more time in, play through it, and witness more of our opinions. But you know what? I think it was a good thing to sort of do that, even though they just dropped like some story DLC, which we're going to talk about later. But
That pissed me off.
yeah, Square Enix and their bullshit. But we're going to get right into it with the first question, which is interesting already. So, what is your opinion on the discourse around Final Fantasy XVI? And this involves people saying that it is not a Final Fantasy game. Shug, I want you to go first.
Well, first of all, screw those people. Fuck them. I think I've played not all of them. Of course, I'm not gonna say I'm an expert at Final Fantasy, but I've played a handful enough from different generations to say that this is still a Final Fantasy game. You know, just because it's not turn-based, and even if it was turn-based, people would still complain about it like they're doing now. And even if it went to action, it'd probably still get shit on like Final Fantasy did, or Final Fantasy 15 did. I think it's just people complain about everything just to find some, or to try and be different. And it's like, dude, you're mainly just embarrassing yourself. This is a Final Fantasy game. It feels like a fucking Final Fantasy game. Some fights were pretty, like over the top. Some fights actually felt like Final Fantasy. I think the Odin fight was like the most Final Fantasy fight we'd had in the game in its like entirety. But like I think overall, just an actiony Final Fantasy it changed everything. It's so pretty much different compared to 15. 15 was just hold the button and keep the combo up. Then before that you have 14, which is an MMO, and then you have 13. I love 13. I don't care what everybody says. I love 13. That was like the first game that I finished. So like I've played some of the different ones. I played the older ones. I played the newer ones. But I think for these to keep going, I think they all need to change in some way. And Final Fantasy 16 did it, and I think it is amazing. It is a Final Fantasy game, no matter what the hell you try to say. That's pretty much what I think.
Justin, what about you? How do you feel about this topic?
I don't know how you say it's not a Final Fantasy game. What am I seeing on the fucking case of the game that I bought with my own fucking money here? What do I see from the company that made the game? What do I see from the goddamn development team, who is the same as that MMO that no one will shut up about, by the way, just to get your meme out there first and foremost, bitches. I don't understand this whole thing of just It's like they plays differently. Okay, so were y'all saying that with 13? I mean, I'm sure you were, but I mean, 13 is just bad. Unlike this one, the discourse was really fucking unneeded because, like, even before release, 16, in my honest opinion, had everything going for it. It had a very beloved development team going for it in CBU3. They have quite a lot of good talent on that team, like from like the devs to the translators, the script writers, the goddamn music. Soken is a goddamn madman, and you're going back to a more actual fantasy-esque setting that just screams like older Final Fantasy instead of the more modern-esque sort of shit. You have, yeah, everything is just. I don't even fucking put this. It just wasn't fucking needed. I mean, people gonna be people on Twitter, fucking regardless. But when you have everything so stacked with it, and who was it from the fucking Devil May Cry? They brought in like the combat director.
Yeah, there is a Devil May Cry combat director on this game. I don't know his name, but I just know he is here and he cooked.
Hell yeah! So you bring a guy like that in to direct the combat. That already sounds hella promising. People's opinions on action Final Fantasy games be damned. If you tell me it's gonna have help from someone who fucking made one of the creme de la creme of combat games, I'm gonna have some fucking faith in it. It's like, sorry to say. So I just think the discourse was incredibly fucking unneeded. And to say it's not a Final Fantasy game is, I mean, after playing the game and just seeing all the like some of the homages, all the just typical tropes of a Final Fantasy game is just legitimately fucking disrespectful as shit. So no, even now, it's I just think it was just more typical Twitter drama as anyone would come to expect nowadays.
What about you, Slash? What do you feel about this whole discourse of Final Fantasy 16 is not a Final Fantasy game?
Well, I'm going to repeat the sentiment of everyone who's gone before me here. It is completely fucking stupid. I feel like delegating or relegating, sorry, an entire franchise to one gameplay style, it's going to limit that franchise in a lot of ways. You can't let your mind creatively flow. And I feel like a lot of Final Fantasy fans, I use that term very loosely here, they're not they're constantly wanting this old turn-based combat style, which I respect. This is where the franchise got its roots. But I feel like ignoring the fact that a franchise needs to prosper in new ground is actively wanting the franchise to hurt. Um, from games like Final Fantasy XII, where the gameplay style was a bit tweaked to have some more live elements to it, all the way to what we have now with Final Fantasy XVI, where it is a Devil May. It plays a lot like Devil May Cry. And even then, like with Final Fantasy, the score style is there, the characters are there, they all feel part of Final Fantasy. You're lumping gameplay when gameplay was never what Final Fantasy fully encompassed. It's like getting mad when a Call of Duty game decides to switch up a few things. Oh, God forbid something new happens. But I think it's I can understand where people are coming from at the same time. Some of the more valid criticisms of not wanting this playstyle. People just miss the old ways that Final Fantasy used to make them feel. They miss kind of the more simplistic elements of it, and I agree. There's a lot of buttons required to fully play Final Fantasy 16 to its fullest extent to get the most out of your damage. But that will be saved for later. And just it's harmful is all I'm gonna say when you're voicing these criticisms and you're gonna go very wild and off the rails with it. Keep the valid criticism going, but toss away the toxic parts. That's all I've got to say on it, really.
Andre, it is your turn. What do you think of this discourse about Final Fantasy 16 not being a Final Fantasy game? Andre? Well, he's muted, so I guess I can go real quick. All right. I think this is kind of funny and hilarious. It's really one of those situations where I really think it is a battle of fans who appreciate the old style and then fans who appreciate the new. That being said, I understand that it's where the roots was sort of it's where the origin came from, the old turn-based style. I get that, but again, it is like Slash said, there needs to be new ground broken in order for stagnation to not happen. It's the reason why we have all these Final Fantasy games in the first place is that they experimented, switched it up, kept some old styles, or they modernized the gameplay, and now you have like stuff like Remake or Final Fantasy VII Remake where they do ATB, which is like active commands when you're in a window, but the style is still action oriented. You're still mashing a button to sort of get combos out and everything. And it's different, but it's also still harkening back to some of the stuff you appreciated before. I think it's fine. I think a former example that Shug brought up was Yakuza, where they have the spin-off where you play the older style and you're a brawler, and then they have the newer ones where it's like RPGs. I think if both thrive in harmony, then I literally don't get the crux of what people are complaining about if they do stuff like this. I do indeed think there's going to still be spin-offs like tactics and all that stuff down the road as well. And they just put out the pixel remasters, so if you want some of that nostalgia, you can get some of that, and it's not really neglected. Just go out and buy those. So I think it is a symptom of not willing to accept when a franchise does experiment, and I think that is something that creates a lot of room for failure if they didn't experiment. Because again, as I said before this whole podcast started, if it was the same thing over and over and over again, I'm pretty sure those same fans would notice, and then they would get mad that nothing's changing and everything's repetitive.
Oh yeah, sorry, my computer messed up. But
Yeah, I wanted to know what you thought of question number one, which is the discourse. I'm finished.
Okay. Okay. Honestly, I think the whole disclosure of FF16 not being a Final Fantasy game is kind of stupid because Final Fantasy to me is like an ever evolving series, like all the way from like the very first FF game from like 87 to Final Fantasy 7 and like 97. Like since then the series has like changed a lot. Like FF8 you had the junction system, FF10 you had like sphere grid, 12 you had the gambit system, then 15 went to action combat, so on and so forth. So it's like Final Fantasy has like changed over the years, and I think a lot of those people just bitching and complaining about it, like just please get over it. Like franchise has changed a lot over the years. I mean, Yakuza is like turn based now, but they're still gonna do like beat 'em up with the side game. So it's like yeah, pardon my language, but at the same time, it's like after a while, franchises have to evolve and change. Otherwise, they'll stay really stagnant. That's all I gotta say, though.
Yeah, and I wanted to give one final point and say, I don't know, I guess people sort of say it's not a Final Fantasy game to try to make themselves look good when it doesn't resemble what previously came before. And there are moments where there's games that don't resemble like previous iterations and they feel like shoehorned in. Like I'm always gonna say, for at least an example, Resident Evil, like Umbrella Corps was not a Resident Evil game that I expected or wanted or cared about. Yes, when the quality is that low, you can say that for those types of games, but when it's high production, they actually give a shit, they actually care, they want to experiment, and the experimentation works, then it's really hard to not call it a Final Fantasy game, especially if it still has those elements of the series that people know and love, just done in a different way. So we're going to move on to question number 2, and that is describe how you feel about the core action RPG gameplay that you played in Final Fantasy XVI, and we're going to start with Justin first.
I am not gonna lie. When I first played the demo, I did not know what to expect because well, they never really showed much gameplay. Last I remember, we only really got story trailers. So when the demo came out, my ass rushed to that PS5 to download that shit because I wanted to know what am I gonna get myself into because I already had enough faith to pre-order the game, so I'm just like, fuck, I gotta know. And I was actually pretty fucking impressed. You have your basic bitch combo, of course. You're gonna be pressing that button a lot just to get some damage in there, but then you also have your mechanics. You also have your freaking mechanics with Torgal. You have quick hotkeys to use your tonics whenever you need to. Yet you can switch between all these freaking like iconic abilities. You can like set hotbars for those. You could weave them in. I mean, sometimes you might miss because they jump at the last fucking frame and you waste your awesome freaking Phoenix swing up hit because fucking piece of shit decided to move out of the way at frame 2 and you hit it at frame 1. And like I mean, party members are a bit inconsequential, but then again, that was kind of the whole point of this. Just they already made that very fucking clear from the start, so I was not very mad about it at all. Although I can imagine some people were because they got to be contrarians. Oh, but I mean, if only there was something I could take, it could have been a little bit faster. But obviously it's not the worst action RPG gameplay. God no. But no, I was actually impressed. I felt a lot of the crunch, especially in some places. Like for example, your Titan abilities are so fucking crunchy, so just satisfying. Whenever you manage to get that good hit, you just charge it up and then or when you get the block and you get to do the counter attacks and you have it upgraded where you could do 3, I could feel the punch, the crunch, just everything. The iconic abilities so fucking nice. Just especially the camera zoom ins or the Garuda one where you could use the rope to freaking knock down an opponent when they're staggered or even half staggered. It was actually such a good fucking thing to do. And they all played so differently. None of them felt too samey because you just had so much of it. I know that's another question, but I still feel like I want to weave just a little bit. I mean, hey, if like in their CBU3 has chosen again to develop a mainline Final Fantasy game, if 17 will have some sort of similar gameplay, mainly like towards like the actiony part, like without like at least without the iconic stuff, maybe a different kind of combo. I wouldn't mind them trying again. Like, maybe iron out some of the kinks to increase the speed a bit, but I honestly wouldn't mind. Like, this is the kind of good shit that I'm into. It's like it'd be like a nice hodgepodge between like just general action RPG gameplay and halfway to basically being a fucking platinum hack and slash. Because it doesn't need to be, but I don't mind if it meets it in the middle.
Andre, what about you? What do you think of the combat in this game?
I love it. So when I remember like what Justin said when he saw all the trailers. I saw like small snippets of it, and I actually skipped the demo. I just waited till the game came out, and what I really did was just watch like a lot of gameplay videos, and I was really liking what I was seeing. Like I had a few concerns maybe with the stagger system, but when I got to the full game, the stagger system is actually not it's done well because if you get the right icon set up, you can actually destroy enemies like with ease, and combat's really fun. It feels very fluid and very like fast. And there's like a lot of weight to it. What I was about to say, yeah, I don't really got too many issues with it. I kind of wish Clive had more combos. That's like a minor nitpick, but I think for their first attempt, at least Yoshi P's team, they really knocked it out of the park. And I think what was it? It's like, well, I remember like someone saying like 15's combat was better, but I'm like, honestly, now that I think about it, 15 was kind of like it was kind of like a small brisk, or 16 feels like a giant like triathlon, just of how much it improved, and like how much they add and experiment with the combat. But overall, I really love 16's combat. Cannot wait for them. Not wait for them to do more action RPGs like this in the future. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do my turn real quick. I love this combat system. Granted, it's not perfect. There are things they could do that could be a little bit more better. Like, I would rather kind of prefer that the summons could have been something like DMC, where they morph into actual weapons that you can wield and hit people with, like maybe a scythe or something. I thought that would have been cool over just the typical sword, but for what you get is not really that bad for the first try. The icon summons you can just hit people with and do these massively multi-hitting combos. I compare the one where you get the Titan to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where you're just constantly machine gun punching a dude to death, and it's just really enjoyable. Also, staggering the enemies and doing extra damage. You have your little air combos. You can dash towards enemies. You can dash and then parry, and then time will like slow down for a little bit while you still are hitting the opponent. They really thought this out a lot more than I would have imagined, which is really great when a game exceeds expectations like that. So they really have like a lot of high volume combat to it, and it really shows a lot more when fighting the bosses, which I'm going to talk about later. But overall, I would say, yeah, outside of a few gripes, like of course Clive could have had more combos and more weapons, I'm overall digging the fact that this game is just raw fun when you're hitting people or slicing them or tearing them apart and doing like special moves. Just the sheer amount to keep the frame rate stable is astronomical in my opinion. Like you're doing like tornadoes, lightning, flame effects, and literally like I saw no choppiness in between, and that was really great for the gameplay. It felt good, and honestly I want to see these guys do a little bit more. That's how I feel about the gameplay. Shug, you're next. How do you feel about the gameplay?
So, I'm gonna go a little bit like far away from like pretty much you guys, and like I feel the same in terms of that. Clive definitely should have had different weapons. I feel like him having at least maybe two weapons would have been just fine. Or how I guess how DMC does it with changing weapons. I guess it kind of does it like how Kingdom Hearts does it. But I thoroughly enjoyed the combat, and like one problem that I only had was just the default controls of it. I had just like freshly just finished Forspoken at the time, and I was like, yeah, I know. But like I got used to the combat in that game, and I was like, it's like I don't like how my hands feel playing with Clive in this combat when I was doing the demo. So I think whenever the game fully released, I took a good 30 minutes and I tried out like the different controls of it and seeing how it feels. And like I think for me to change how the controls were gave me more I guess confidence in the combat a bit more. And it's like I don't play any DMC games. Like I think the only one that I've played was the DMC one that everybody hates, and I'm like I disqualified it from being something that I played. So like that was pretty much like my first experience with the type of game. But I do believe that they should have done a bit more in the combos. I feel like the constant slashing kind of just got boring at times, and it's like some of these guys were damage sponges, so you're just there sitting slashing with the same shit over and over and over. You perfect dodge, you turn, you go into the rage mode, and you do the same shit over again. It's like I feel like those things didn't have any changes, but again, it's like their first time, I guess, making a game in terms of like Final Fantasy and this kind. It's fine. I think that if they do again work for like Final Fantasy 17, I really hope they improve in terms of giving us different weapons. I think the fact that they didn't give us different weapons kind of took off out of the Final Fantasy magic, I want to say, because all Final Fantasies have like their own just equipment of galore, and so it kind of felt just like, hey, these one sword which is just the same shit reskinned, and no type of bonus damage or hidden abilities or kind of stuff like that you didn't really really get. It just either boosted your attack or it didn't. So like I feel that the weapons should have definitely changed in terms of like, you know, if you really want to keep the Final Fantasy magic, in terms, you know, if you Final Fantasy VII and all the other ones that do have a variety of weapons. But yeah, like I think overall the combat was fun. I just need some changes, and I really do believe that it missing combos, I think, was one of like those bigger gripes towards like the end of the game. That I was like, I'm kind of getting bored of the combat a little bit, but I'm not hating it. So it was like I wanted it to be to where I needed to memorize these combos for me to make shit work, and it wasn't. It was just either tap it 3 times, tap, hold, and tap, hold, and tap. So it's like it got repetitive, I will say, but I didn't hate it. It's just I think it needed to change a bit more with how they did it.
Flash, what about you? What is your opinions on the combat system itself?
Well, I thought the combat was very extensive for what I expected out of a kind of DMC style Final Fantasy. Um, eh, there's another game it reminds me of, and it's modern day God of War a little bit. Some of the combos, like some of the flailing around, the dodges as well, they remind me a bit of God of War. I don't know if anyone else sees that, but I'll go with the sentiment of combos. I feel like needed to be a more intricate part of the experience, and the overall like uh, style of the game, the sword play and everything. It could have had a bit more flair, but I was perfectly fine with what I had. On top of the iconic summons, as well as the even the icon gameplay itself was already good enough uh, for what it was. I really enjoyed that, but again, we'll get into that later. I was also with Andre. It was a big shocker to me because I knew nothing about this game going into it. Until like Final Fantasy 16 had a month out until its release. I knew nothing about this game. I had seen the trailer in 2020 and I saw nothing else about it. It's coming out in a month, and I was like, oh, I'm going to pick that up with my new PS5. And I really, and I hope they do keep this style or at least make some tweaks to it because it's a decent style that they can use. But going back to my initial point on the first question, I hope they don't sacrifice creativity to keep this style. Keep coming up with new gameplay styles that will work in the world of Final Fantasy, because this can't hold them off forever. It's like the new Call of Duty games holding off on this new engine for so long and then ultimately failing. Final Fantasy just doesn't need that right now, especially with how big it's getting again with the release of 16.
All right, so this is man, this gameplay. Justin, have you already went, right?
But for the action RPG gameplay, yeah, I did.
Yeah, okay. So I guess we're gonna move on to the summons. Now, there's a lot of summons in this game that you can utilize and do special and crazy combos with. What is your favorite summon setup that you had that you used throughout the game? I'm going to let Justin go first.
Oh, I really switched up a lot just because I was really curious as I kept playing through the game, just all these abilities because there were so fucking many just to go through and their utilizations depending on your situation, et cetera, all that crap. I mean, okay, I will say I pretty much kept Phoenix on the whole time because a gap closer is never a bad thing. Let pretty much every Final Fantasy 14 veteran ever tell you that: gap closer, gap closer, gap closer. because it can easily, in a pinch, be the difference between you dying or the enemy dying, because you just need to get the fuck in there and wreck their shit. So I mainly kept it on for Phoenix ship, but I also really like the actual moves in general because you had options. You had like your AOE's and uh that's I keep forgetting the fucking Rising Flames I think was the name of just like the first move you get. For one of the first moves you get, it it still has its utility throughout the entire thing. It's just a very simple, just like freaking slap in the face, and it could easily yeah, it's a freaking single target move, but it fucking works. And it's one of the first freaking moves you get in the game. It's like, how am I still using this? And yet here I am on the final boss, and he's trying to wreck my shit. It's like, how is this still working? But it fucking does, and I love it for that. I shamelessly kept Phoenix out. I don't give a shit. Uh, let's see. Again. I feel like you need fucking Garuda just because of that hook move for when you get the enemy stagger down and you need to use I think it's Deadly Embrace where you hook them down. And this even works on bosses. This even works on bosses where you could pull them down and you can get some extra hits and it's fucking perfect. And even some of Garuda's actual moves, like the damage is kind of pissed, but the combo potential is fucking amazing. I think it was the very appropriately named Gouge. I freaking love that name so much. It sounds crunchy. And also the amount of damage it does to the stagger bar is actually pretty fucking insane. You could knock down you can knock them down when they're half staggered. And you could get down like another like good chunk of their stagger bar by just procking Gouge the minute that you're close enough to. Just watch it just freaking go. This was one of my favorite things to do while fighting for any boss, any mini boss, major enemies, all that shit. Titan. I was struggling to decide whether to keep the moves or not, just because some of the utilities here. I kept that damn punch move for a while. I kept the AOE for a while. Once you get the upgrade where you have the red section just that much larger, and you pretty much can't fucking miss it. It's crunchy as shit, like I've mentioned before, and it just utterly decimates some health bars to just such degrees. The sound designer, bless you for all the crunchy sounds that you got for that shit, because that was just amazing. So I kept that one move with Bahamut, especially I fucking forget its name, but it's the one where you have all those wispy things just like freaking going all over the enemies. It actually helped a lot to build up the LB gauge to whittle down some other opponents. It was pretty good for crowd control, and honestly, crowd control is also pretty fucking good. When I need to do some other missions, its main ability to uh, get Mega Flare was pretty fucking useful because I mean, especially if you practice your dodging, that's some good shit. You can wreck large plumes of enemies just with one fully charged Mega Flare. You just make them your bitch. Oh, and if you love using magic, then Satellite's also pretty good. I don't know too much about the other moves, but fuck it when you have some pretty goddamn good crowd control. Hi Shiva, how you doing? Oh, Odin, I mean, it's a bit late into the game, honestly, but if you can master that shit, if you take some time, I've seen some insane fucking combos. I am nowhere near that good with this game's combat. Some of the things I've seen people do is utterly insane with the game's combat. I don't know how the hell they get the time to practice it, how they do it, especially when you fucking see someone do Odin damageless and fucking parrying some shit I could never imagine to be parried. But yowza. And I mean, I have my thoughts about Ramu. I feel like that I don't even know how do I even describe Ramu's abilities, because it's like at one point it's like you want to go here, it's crowd control, but this one wants to be this and this one wants to be that. I found my uses for every iconic ability. I'm gonna say that straight up right now. They all have their uses to some degrees, but some are just very clearly better than others. That's for goddamn sure. But are they all fun in their own way? In my honest opinion, yes. Yes, they are. Just try out some combos because honestly, you never know what you might find loving very much. Because that was me with fucking Bahamut.
All right, Andre, it is your turn. What do you think of the iconic summons, and which ones did you run with the most?
The iconic summons. I loved the icon system in 16. And for a lot of reasons, but the reason why I love it the most is like it's very well. It's like really versatile, you know, like what Justin said. Like there's like I'd say all some of them have their like they're all useful in different ways. Like Garuda is really good. I think Garuda is really good when it comes to like stunning enemies with her like iconic feat, which uses basically think like Nero's Devil Bringer dash from Devil May Cry. It stuns him for a bit, and it's good for like combos. One is nutty, dude. Like I'm telling you right now, like if you have Rift Slip, then there was another one. I think it was Dancing Steel. I think it was like Dancing Steel. If you have both equipped, Odin literally can like destroy health bars just with how much damage alone it deals. Like because it also like destroys stagger as well. I think I found all of them pretty useful. Like I was cycling throughout most of them. I'd say Ramuh is weird. I think its feat is probably the weakest, but definitely has some really good abilities. Like I actually think it's like I think Pile Driver is like a good crowd control move. I is literally just if you like the fighting game was icon. Like if you play lots of fighting games, you can literally just JoJo punch enemies to death. And I love it. I love the little noise it makes when you do the parry, like ding. Oh, so great. It's really hard to say which favorite I have. I kind of like all of them. I think they're all useful for like different situations and thankfully the game has like what was it, a practice mode similar to like Devil May Cry 5 where you can just literally go and practice all of your icon abilities for hours and then come up with different combos. But overall, yeah, I think the icon system is great. I really love it. I think my only gripe is I do kind of wish they did a little more, like they have more moves, I guess, with some of the skill trees. But for what we got, it's pretty phenomenal. So yeah, no complaints from me.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the more intriguing systems of the game, considering, well, it's just basic stuff 101, but it just works to a fundamental level. Like, you have cooldowns for these icons that you can use. You can put like multiple on, like 3 at a time, and you could just totally shift and go house with varying combos. Like if you want to use the Ifrit and do like a fire combo, then switch it up and do a Bahamut, and then you just use like light based attacks, you could do that. It's just a lot of like interesting stuff to what is going on with the combo system, which I found to be kind of cool when using the icons in unison. It definitely did spice things up a little bit more than I guess what I imagined, but it is like Andre said, I kind of wish it was just a little bit more to the cooldown structure and how they factor in. But overall though, I thought it was a neat system just to do like these snatch moves when you get Garuda. They felt like intertwined with like your gameplay and how it works fighting against the various enemies, whether it increases your block or damage, or it just does like certain and differing things that helps you in combat. The ones that I use the most, obviously, I mean, the fire one is your first, so that's the initial one that you're gonna be using like a lot during the first half of the game, which I'm kind of used to it by now. It was like one of those things where I got ingrained into using it, even though there was better icons to use. But that being said, when I started to get stuff like Titan and Shiva, I really started to do like a ton more damage to people, especially the Titan one, where, like I said, you're just punching people and mauling them to death with the buttons pressed. And once you hit that like critical damage of a Titan hit, they just go flying like all over the place. It's just nuts and ridiculous. I also like the one that's the electric Rama. I thought that one was cool too because you could just like throw a lightning spear and just zap everything in the area. It's just varying ways of how you utilize it in combat. There are some better than others. Clearly, I wish that it's like Justin said. I wish the Garuda did like a lot more damage with the scratching attack that you do. But overall, though, it's a very diverse skill tree for all of them, and you really have to pick and choose properly. Where am I going to go with this? What's going to be upgraded all the way fully to do max damage or range, or upgrade the ability I need in order to not take a hit? And it really makes you think, because the skill points in the game for each and every single one of them are fucking astronomically huge when upgrading them. So it made me think more. It made me think, okay, now I have these like tools in my arsenal, like what's the best and which ones is like ones I can keep in the background, but they still shift up between the gameplay. And that was the first thing that came to my mind when playing this game. It made me really think, how am I going to be the most powerful in the quickest amount of time? And that's what I think of the icon and the summon in general. I think it's fucking phenomenal, and the ones that I use was pretty cool, but it is something that needs a little bit more work to be better in a sense of a sequel. I think if they enhance it or if they put it back in some degree, even if they change it, they could add a lot more to it than the basic cooldown structure. So I'm gonna move this question to Shug. What do you think of the icons?
So I experimented a lot. I reset my tree a lot while whenever I would try to mix and match them. So I kept Phoenix just because I felt that just needed to be kept there. And it's one of those like first ones that they give you. You're kind of just you have already, by the time that you're halfway through the game, you already know how to do everything with Phoenix. So like that's the one that I kept. What I used for Phoenix was mainly the Cyclone and the and Ifrit's like lunge attack. He just like lunges for an extended amount of time. But for the other two, I did use just Garuda and Ramu for a very long time. But once I got to the point where I had a Titan and Bahamut, basically what I had done is I had kept Ramu, and then I used one of Ramu's abilities, which is like the orb that he plants down, and you can just keep hitting it, and it keeps doing damage. So I did that, and I comboed it with the Bahamut Wisp. Like that was probably like my way of staggering the fastest, and I would also use the specific Ramu ability where you just charge the attack and summon more bolts. Then after that, I played with Garuda a little bit, but I didn't like how it was working, so I mainly just switched to Shiva entirely. And I had just I kept Shiva just by herself mainly because of her crowd control in terms of freezing everything. And so like her abilities, I played with them a little bit. I think I enjoyed more the one where it pulls everything in, and then I combo it with Diamond Dust. So like once I was able to actually mess around with them, I enjoyed it a lot more. But like in the beginning, I was kind of struggling because I wanted to combo these a bit better than what I was having, and it took me some time to again to get used to the type of combat and how to like I said, I'm not really a big DMC player, so the comboing was something that took me a little bit to get used to, and so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was very fun. I do think that they could have maybe gone a different way to how to upgrade them. I think maybe like some like how they do in what's it called, in Final Fantasy remake or 7 remake, where you have to use this ability a certain amount of times until we upgrade it or give it to you. So like I feel I could have done something a bit more with that skill tree stuff, but I think overall just the combos and stuff that I could come up with was very interesting, and especially the fact that I could still have one specific icon ability, but I can switch around the other two, not heavy abilities basically. So I think just the pure fact that I was able to mix and match and just to mess around and switch them out and experiment with different abilities, I think was probably like one of the best parts of the game.
Flash, what about you? What do you think of the icon abilities in Final Fantasy XVI?
Well, first off, I do think it's a really interesting way of bringing in these classic like Final Fantasy summons like Ifrit, Garuda, Odin, and all them. It's a very classic way of bringing them back in, especially in the story. Uh, Now, I usually found myself like most people using Phoenix. I felt again his Phoenix shift was just fantastic for closing distance to get a very desperate attack in. I felt like I really liked uppercut and the cyclone abilities. Those were some of the abilities I really used. They were good for kind of bringing in a few, and the cyclone especially was good for bringing in a few enemies around and then sending them all back out. Titan was also another one that I really loved using simply for the destructive capabilities of it. His counter was also very good. It could give you free hits in for like minimal damage done to you if you're just wanting to get those free hits in. His punch, the Titan punch, was very powerful. I felt like it was a good way to whittle down some health at the end, as well as ripping up the earth and causing a fuckload of damage. My God, it's a lot of damage. But one of them that I was surprised I ended up using a lot was Shiva. Shiva, I felt like opened myself up for new attacks. I could easily combine her and Phoenix with Titan, Garuda, Odin, anyone who did a lot of damage. Uh, Especially Shiva's Diamond Dust attack. That is a very powerful attack when you master it. And I feel like and just its effects all over. It really helped me in the final boss fight too, freezing the final boss to get to open myself up for some more attacks. It's a small window, but it's enough of a window to make a mark. The ones that I didn't really, I was surprised I didn't end up using Bahamut as much as I did. Bahamut just was not. Bahamut and Ramu, they were the two weakest icons for me. Especially, I don't remember who said it earlier, but someone said that Ramu. It felt like they didn't know what they wanted Ramu to do, either crowd control or just one hit kills and everything, and that's very evident with its abilities. They're just all scattered around. Odin, hard to master, very obviously, and Bahamut just I didn't like how he played. But if you ever want to get good at these icons, simply run the chronolith trials and you will master those icons in no time.
All right.
Right, those things.
Yeah. Oh my God, the things took forever. They felt like a complete gauntlet.
Yeah, those Chronicle trials were a pain. Were just a pain to do. Like, uh, hey, at least, but at the same time, you get like really good rewards for them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And they are a good way to just the final chronolith trials that you unlock from them. They're really great for just testing your abilities at that point. If you don't want to go through the Hall of Virtue and you want some kind of a challenge, you can always go into the final chronolith trials and just try your hand at really mastering these icons to make the most out of them. And you can do it with all of them. Just because I don't like Bahamut and Ramu, you they're viable.
So we're gonna move on to question number 4. Let's focus on the overall boss battles as a topic. How did you feel about them alongside the giant kaiju iconic battles? Also, a bonus if anyone wants to mention the score or the OST during the game or the boss fights. Andre, I want you to go first.
Badly. All the boss fights in this game are incredible. Like, just probably some of the most hype moments. Like, I think out of all the games I played this year, Episode 16 really had the most hype moments. Like, and like saying it's like my favorite fight in the I think my favorite fights in the game. It's like a huge toss up between what was it, Clive versus Titan, what was it, Titan Lost or Clive versus Barnabas. Bahama was dope too. I really loved the Bahama fight. That was pretty crazy. Really insane and just over the top. I really like how when you're fighting I like one thing that I think that's really dope about like Barnabas's fight too is like you go into icon form, but it's more so only during like a QT because Barnabas and Clive are so strong at sort of like matching each other in power. So I was like mustering all of his power to like land like one blow on him, but can't. And Barnabas tries doing like his ultimate attack, and Clive literally grabs the blade, breaks it in two, and does his on two Setsuken on Barnabas. And he literally says, "How dare you?" And yeah, like it's just really dope, intense moments like that. I also like Clive versus Hugo was pretty sick too. Like especially not really. Well, I think we've all played it, but Hugo no hands Kupka. Yeah, man, awesome hands. All right. Soundtrack is goated too. Like I think my favorite song in the entire game is probably "Find the Flame" because I always play that like my phone every time I like, go out on a walk. It's so good. But yeah, soundtrack and boss fights are they're great. Definitely great.
Justin, it is your turn. What do you think of these peak boss fights, and what do you think of the score as well, alongside with them?
Uh oh, I'll be straight. So this game has some of the best fucking bosses I have ever fought in any video game I've ever played in my entire life. Just some of the regular non-iconic boss fights are pretty damn good on their own. Like the fight with the Infernal Shadow, for example. That is like one of my favorite fights in the fucking game. Just everything about it from before, like from like the first phase to after Find the Flame starts playing. Oh my god, I'm like yo, a fight against a doppelganger that kicks fucking ass. Why don't most games do this right anymore? And just and such a perfect test of just like learning how to dodge shit, learning how to counter. It's just like, and if you get that parry, even on accident, oh, you feel like a fucking god. And Andre did already mention Titan Law. Oh my god. Actually, the entire Titan sequence has to be one of the like it's so built up from like a certain part of the game. You were just wondering when you're gonna get to kick this dude's ass, and you do so at sort of at first, like with just Kupka himself, but then it's just like lol. It's like not lol. Nah, he becomes fucking Jamie Lannister times two. LOL. But then you actually get to it, and the first fucking part is you just it's a fucking just like freaking just, yeah, like a kaiju shit right there, just fucking like Godzilla trying to fight against fucking Ghidorah or some crap like that. But it's not over. You're fucking going all Azura's Wrath in this shit. I'm like, my fucking jaw was on the goddamn floor, and oh my god, I'm probably gonna keep mentioning this. The goddamn music, Soken is a fucking genius when it comes to music. That man, when you give him a program, some instruments, just and the time in the world, that dude can freaking cook you an entire gourmet meal to last you for fucking weeks. Just the way Clyde just fucking is just like, well, shit, he's like 10 times my size. Fuck it, I'm gonna run to him. I'm like, this dude's crazy. He's freaking crazy. He's freaking running to this massive motherfucker that could probably crush him in just a flick of a finger, and all those arms climbing the dude's body itself. And then the music that plays mid between the fight is just like, oh, it's not only a bop, but I'm just like, yeah, so can I played 14. I know how Titan sounded in that game too. It's just like, yeah, this is your work, all right, but it kicks fucking ass. There's a reason why, like, 16's music, some of its music was already put into Theater Rhythm as a freaking DLC pack about maybe only a few months later. And even then, he's still not done. Because even after that, he still refuses to die. He's too angry to die. He's just like Azura. Too fucking angry to die because you still have that one part where you're falling through the fucking mountain. And you have that clash at the end. And the cinematic camera pans when you get to the victory screen. I'm like, this is one of the best boss fights I've ever played in a fucking game. How the hell did y'all do this? Is the kind of crap they could do when they have a single player experience and they're not too barred down by having to make a fight for an MMO, because all of it, some of the fights in 14 are also genuinely very impressive, just from like music, set piece, all that stuff. But this is the kind of shit they could do when it's just you playing and you don't have to rely on like 7 other people in your party to do so. And even then, it's still not fucking done, because I would say Titan is like my favorite boss fight in the game, but that ties with fucking Bahamut, which, oh lord, everything about that fight was fucking brilliant. From the first section to the fucking like, you know, Star Fox ass section, to back to Clive, and then when you go into space and even he's too angry to die, and he fucking becomes Bahamut Zero or some shit like that, and the final section when he's fucking about to try and nuke the entire planet with Zeta Flare. When that prompt popped up on my screen, if only y'all could have seen my fucking reaction, because I've been a Final Fantasy fan for a long, long time. And if you know Zeta Flare, you know it is rarely, rarely ever used in the entire franchise, because the amount of power behind it could level planets, probably chunks of galaxies even. Yeah, it's that fucking powerful. So when he says he would burn the world, I'm like, yeah, he's gonna more than burn the world, all right. He's gonna freaking nuke to oblivion. You know, one of the only other fucking notable uses of Zeta Flare ever is fucking Donald Duck. Donald fucking Duck. That's the most recent fucking Zeta Flare use we ever got in any fucking Square Enix property, and now we're using it to this. And the best part is how they deflected it too. They don't even flinch. They just go and fly to the beam and they block it. And it's just like it just keeps going and going. And if you have played 14, you are popping the fuck off, because you know exactly what they referenced here. When they do that and they go right through the body and it's just like having a moment, I'm like, I too played the Bahamut raids. I knew exactly what that was. I love that scene too. And Ascension is one of the best fucking boss scenes I've ever heard in my entire life. And at the end of the victory screen, I just needed a moment. I was heating from the fight, and probably my PS5 freaking trying to cook this. The heated the room, everything about it. I'm just, I after all that, I like, once it gave me back the controller to control Clive again for the gameplay, I say for the night, I'm like, I can't top that tonight. I'm done. I can't top any of that. I'm playing again tomorrow. Because legit, I'm just like, I'm not following that. I am going to bed with just knowing that that was the last thing I freaking did tonight.
This is like, no lie, this is by far some of the most epic stuff I've seen in this game. Also, Justin, are you finished?
I just needed I noticed you unmuting your mic, so I wanted you to get your piece in, because I just saw like a little more to say. Like, nowhere near as
go
much
ahead.
as like
Go ahead.
those two, because I mean, I'm be straight, those two peak in terms of like the kind of shit they could do. The others definitely do have their own peaks. It's just holy hell, like they went off the fucking rocker with Titan and Bahamut. They had the most fun with those, you could tell. Because like, I mean, hell, even the fight, like I'll mention, the Barnabas fight was actually a pretty unique way of doing things. Like, you want to talk about a fight where you just can't fucking win? That's a way to do it. Like, when the game gives you a mechanic that it teaches you so early on, like the charge up attacks, and that meter is barely draining, and that's how you know, well, you're fucked, boy. You're just fucked. You can't win. That's a good way to do it. And just it shows this, like, he's no fucking laughing matter. And also props to fucking David Mencken. Barnabas's English VA. That dude played Malus in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and he also did fucking amazingly in that. So props to him. I mean, props to the entire VA team. I'm just gonna say that right now. They all did fucking amazingly. And then when you get to that built up fight with Odin, everything shows is just like this motherfucker's not to be trifled with. He is freaking trying to level my ass. He's about to freaking destroy a building. And then there's a fight on top of the tower. And again, if you ever have the time, watch like a damageless run of that fucker, because some of the tech that these people do is insane. Some of the attacks they parry with perfect pixel frame timing. I know that wasn't grammatically right, but I don't care. It's some of the most insane shit I've ever watched. I'm like, I wish I was this good with 16th combat, because if this is what you could do with enough practice, I'm like, dude, I want that, because that was insane. And the entire final boss sequence, oh my god, there is a reason it was like almost 3 hours long. Like everything about that shit, like from like the first and then especially to the last part, just like the last freaking sequence where you're just getting that last hit and press, just with that cinematic press the freaking square button. I'm just like, I'm like, y'all, how do you make every freaking fight? And like the biggest thing that I see in YouTube comment sections with like the iconic battles, especially, is like, how do they make this feel like the final boss, but it's not the final boss? It's just as good as the final boss. The people at CBU3, freaking Yoshi P and his team, knocked out the fucking park with boss fights, and they kind of made the standards go a little too high here, because if some bosses in the middle of the game can be held up to the standard of a final boss in a separate RPG, then I'm gonna be straight. Like, they gave themselves and other RPG developers some big shoes to fill in terms of just other things. If you're going to make it look like you're gonna go big, then make it deliver. And they fucking delivered on these fights, especially with Titan and Bahamut. I'm gonna be straight, and I'm gonna reiterate this one more time so it's grounded dust. Those two fights in this one game alone are not only some of the best fights I've ever played in a fucking game in my entire life, but are also two huge ass reasons why I say, but buy this fucking game. I don't care if you have a PS5 or you're gonna wait for the PC version. This fucking game and its bosses are some top tier shit. And even the regular boss music, beautiful. Just saying that right now. Soaking, fucking genius. Alright, I need a drink.
All right, so it's a lot for me to say, but I'm gonna try to keep this all summarized. I think that every fight is incredible in this game. It is no contest. It's like Justin said, it's very weird. It's almost strange to the point where you're in the mid game at one point, and even in some of the beginning, where it feels like every singular fight is a final boss. I keep thinking to myself, okay, when are they gonna leave like some of this juice for the third act? Because my god, I've never seen a game that had consecutive like boss battle, boss battle, boss battle, boss battle, and they're all like really peak. Even with the lesser enemies and dragons that I fought like recently, like the acoustic dragon, that felt like an epic fight on its own, and that was just a regular encounter in like the Crystal Curse mission. So I was just thinking to myself, if they can keep doing stuff like that, then the bar is definitely raised for like RPG fights in general and RPG bosses, because we're talking about like regular enemies like feeling like final bosses here. It was spectacular, for lack of better words. I can't even describe it. I almost got like scared to the point because of the whole rumor where it's like, oh, if you keep playing these boss battles, and I know it was stupid, but your PS5 is gonna overheat. And I was like, okay, at this point, after seeing the scale and how giant the motherfuckers is, and all the fire effects going around, I was like, okay, my PS5 can blow up now anytime. I don't care, because I'm witnessing like peak boss fights 101, and it was just astonishing. Especially I think my favorite moment of the game got to be the part where he like accepts the truth and he just goes ape shit, and then you just see the Clive clone get readily destroyed. I'm like, okay, this is the most hype thing ever. And the Hugo fight as well was pretty good, because I'm like, okay, now I'm really getting this super challenge. Now this guy has all these tools, and hey, at the end I get to cut his hands off. So that's the funniest thing about that part of the whole cutscene and sequence of that, as well as just seeing the giant kaiju like creatures and playing with them and flying around doing punches and them having like two giant health bars. It is it is fucking astronomically peak. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just top tier shit that's happening in this game, man. Honestly, if other games will take a lesson or take a sample right out of their book, by all means go right ahead. The best comparison I think I have to this is how peak the fights were in God of War 3, but you're getting them in like every single act in the game, and that is this game in RPG setting, like 40 hours of it. Also, the soundtrack is phenomenal. The battle theme is like some of my favorite shit ever. I'm always posting like music from this game because that's how really good it is. I'm not surprised that it won best score this year for Game Awards, I believe, and it can't be topped. This is really good. The only thing that's going to top it is if Soken just cooks again and we get him in the booth, because man, my god, incredible stuff. So I'm going to pass my turn to Shug. What did you think of the boss fights and the score?
I think the boss fights are fucking amazing. Like I said, out of all the fights, really, to me, just to me personally, I think that the Odin fight was probably the most Final Fantasy fight in the game. Like, it is pretty much felt like you fighting this final boss that just keeps turning himself into his own summon, and it's like I said with Final Fantasy 13 too, if I remember correctly, like the last boss is Caius, and Caius turns into Bahamut like 2, maybe 3 times, and so like it's just like that one fight where it's just the dude just keeps trying to just completely kill you in terms of his power, but you're matching him at every turn. So like I think I liked him. It was pretty fun fight, but I wouldn't say it was my favorite personally. I think that the Titan fight was probably my favorite number one, mainly because of how big of a scale it was. I think that it is, while not as big scale as the first Ultima fight, the 3 icons versus Ultima fight, or Bahamut. I think that fight was pretty fucking cool, especially it being like the first one of its scale in the game. It was very fun, very hype as hell, and it was. I think probably it felt like I was playing God of War for like 2 seconds, with like I was fighting Kronos or something. So the Titan Lost fight, probably one of my favorites, especially towards the end, where it kind of gives me like Lord of the Rings vibes with the 2 guys falling endlessly into a pit. So I think that fight for sure was like 100% one of my favorites, and I think the soundtrack went really well with it. I kind of wish that the boss fights all had different songs, but overall I think that song in general was still pretty good. It's just that I think they should have had like some sort of like different music to them specifically. And the Bahamut fight, again, it's pretty much very large scale in terms of full-blown Azura's Wrath kind of deal. One motherfucker's too angry to die, we're too angry to die, and it's just, a head-on collision. Especially with the flares, the Terra Flare and the Zeta Flare. I was like, I'm dead. I accepted my fate. I was like, I'm not even going to do anything kind of deal. But I think those fights were really epic, and I loved the large scale of them. And I think that the fact that I kind of got used to those large scales, kind of why is that I don't really appreciate the Odin fight as much as I do the other 2. But I think that all the fights are actually pretty good in terms of main bosses. If we're going for like side bosses, I think side bosses are pretty fucking cool, especially fighting the dragons. I think the dragons are pretty fun. Kind of wish we would have fought Ramu in some way. I think that would have been interesting to fight him. And I I kind of wish in some way that they should have put Tom Berries in here just for fun, and I kind of miss that. I kind of wanted them to put Tom Berries, but yeah, I think the second hardest fight I think I ever had on the game was the Behemoth, because towards the last leg of the game, you fight Odin, then you fight a Behemoth, and then you fight Ultima for like a whole hour. So like you kind of get so overwhelmed with these boss fights that it's just like, oh shit, it's like this boss fight kicked my ass, this one kicked my ass, next one's probably gonna kick my ass, and the rest of this one's gonna take me even longer, and I'm gonna get my ass kicked. Like, I was probably the most I've died in the game was on that last leg of the game, which was like probably maybe 5-6 hours. And I think just like overall, I think it was the boss fights were fucking epic. They were amazing. They were fun. They were entertaining. They were just so large scale. My PlayStation was burning up. I would take the disc out and that shit would be like melting. So they were amazing. And the music even better. I think, like I said, I kind of wish the bosses had their own type of music, but I forget the name. Find the Flame was still a pretty good score, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Slash, it is your turn. What do you think of these boss fights and the score itself?
Okay, can I just say to Justin, how fucking amazing his goddamn section was. Holy fuck. I don't know if anyone can top that in this podcast's history. Holy shit. But I really was surprised by the icon fights because, like I said, I walked into the game knowing nothing. I knew that summons were going to be in the game, but for them to open up the game with an icon fight, it truly sets the stage with the partial Ifrit Phoenix fight. And that's just a small snippet of that fight. There's like 4 different sections of it. All the way, everyone's been talking about Titan, so I don't know if I can offer much in that. The Typhon fight, or Typhon, I don't know how to pronounce it. I really liked that fight. It was something different than what we really expected with any of like the Mother Crystal kind of boss fights before the destruction of the Mother Crystals. But I do want to give a shout out to probably one of the best ones, Garuda. I really liked the Ifrit Garuda boss fight, simply just because of the clashing of 2 different styles, really. The speed of Garuda versus the slow Godzilla-like power of Ifrit. It was really like watching Godzilla versus Mothra all over again, It was something like that. In fact, Ifrit just gave me a lot of Godzilla vibes, to be honest. And even to end off the boss fights, they're very, very brutal in how the boss fights are ended. With how you eventually kill these titans. Or kill. Depends on where you think that ending is going to go. But with the boss fights that aren't the iconic boss fights, like y'all said, I feel like the music could have been shifted around. I feel like they could have created some new pieces of music because there weren't many big boss fights. At least for the Hugo Kupka semi-primed boss fight, you could have kept that amazing piece that they start off with the timpanis going, the dun 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 dun. It's like it sets you up so well just for them to launch into the regular boss fight theme. The regular boss fight theme isn't bad though. I mean, I just feel like it. At a point, you're tuning out that music every time you go into one of those boss fights. So, I feel like they overuse it a little. The regular fight theme, again, kind of tune it out at a certain point because you're hearing it all over the place. And even the Odin boss fight, I feel like that boss fight is spread around so many different. It's spread over an hour-long section of the game, really, because you start off in the middle of the sea. He's fucking Mosesed it, and you just think like, well, how are we gonna get out of this? And then you finally get to Ash, then you get to the tower, and then you do the boss fight. It's like that whole tiny section, that whole entire section has been leading up to that Odin boss fight. And it's genius. They're setting up the dread of the boss that you can't win. And Ben Starr perfectly sells some of the rage screams during these boss fights. Summoning Ifrit. The first time he finally like unleashes Ifrit and realizes he is what killed his brother, killed quotations right there. And he finally comes to terms with it. Just to kill Garuda. I mean, for fuck's sake, you nuke Garuda. You nuke her. She dies in a fucking nuke. I'm surprised her fucking body wasn't ash after that. And it goes back to like the uncomfortable ends to the first few bosses. I mean, Joshua's boss fight with Ifrit is very heartbreaking in that sense. As you're just watching this monster mercilessly rip at this bird, and it's uncomfortable to watch. But then it leans more into the badass power fantasy, those final punches that you get in those bosses. The Bahamut boss fight, Bahamut. I don't know how to pronounce these things. I'm sorry. I'm gonna butcher all of these names the whole podcast. But the Bahamut boss fight, I really love that final section in space. You're striving to survive against a boss that is lost all compassion, a man who's lost all compassion for humanity after what the incarnation of Ultima has done to his family. On his last legs, a broken man, and just seeing that reflected on his boss, I feel like it's a great personal. It brings these bosses from these godlike creatures and it humanizes them. It shows you, it reminds you, these are humans under these that did not ask for these powers. They did not ask for these horrendous fates, but they're forced to. The final boss fight, Ultima is a great boss. Or a great villain. I won't say great boss. He's an okay boss. I feel like his fight just dragged on a bit too long for me. He just felt like it wasn't the grand finale that we were really promised. In fact, Titan is more of what I expected Ultima's final boss to be. Just endless wage war on the fucking planet. Just crushing mountains and everything. And that's what I was hoping that Ultima would end up being, and I was wrong. And the Clive clone fight, obviously we can't say much on that because it goes into story, or I can't say much because it goes into why I love this story. They just all come together in a nice little bow, and they don't let up. They always escalate in tension. Each boss has these story implications that is going to guide you along a path. You think it's going to drop all the time, but then it says, nope, you know how that guy could have nuclear blasted like the entire fucking continent? Nah, this guy can like nuke planets. GG's though. So, but if I were to actually pick a favorite boss, it would probably be Titan. Just the utter scale of it was like I was exhausted at the end of it. it goes on for that long, but it's well worth the wait. And they build these bosses up so well after multiple hour playthroughs in their areas of the nations. And again, underling bosses could have used some work, but everything else perfect.
All right, so we're moving on to question number 5, and this is the thoughts of a story and how we think of the story, the characters, and the overall mature themes of Final Fantasy XVI. If anyone has any theories as well about the ending, we could also squeeze that in. First, I'm going to start with Andre.
Was a Final Fantasy. Okay, the story. As for the story, was since we're on that, I one of the reasons I was genuinely very excited for this game is because they're gonna go for like a more darker, mature feel for it, and honestly, I think they really knocked it out of the park with this game. Like it's kind of funny because FF15 felt so underbaked, and that game was kind of marketed as like a really dark and mysterious game. But when the game actually came out, it didn't quite live up to like what they hyped up in the trailers for 16. Bro, you got people getting like executed, slaughtered, shit. Like Clive's dad gets his head cut off in the intro of the game, and then I was like, people dying left and right, and like what was it? Bears are treating it as like being treated like trash. It's I'd say they nailed it. Like they really did a fantastic job with like the world and setting up the characters, in which I think Clive honestly is just probably one of the best was an FF protagonist in a very long time, helped by the amazing performance of Ben Starr, which Ben Starr just fucking knocks it out of the park with him, especially like a lot of the later emotional moments. In fact, I'd say the entire voice cast in that game is just really good. There's one scene in the game that sort of that's stuck in my head rent free, and it's the scene where Dion talks to his father, and I had this like something about had this like what was it, this Game of Thrones kind of energy to it, where this is like really, or the simple gesture of like Dion's father Sylvester putting the flower on, giving him the flower, considering how deep, sort of like how even though their relationship is fractured, Dion still cares for him, and along with that, all the other characters, like that scene alone was just like fantastic, and especially also the scene where like Clive kind of like accepts being Ifrit's dominant. That was a very like powerful scene that really like stuck with me for the rest of the game. And yeah, also like Sid, man, Sid was just I wish he was in the game more. That's all I gotta say. Sid was just an amazing character all around. As for theories on the ending, well, I was in deep in thought before this podcast, but like one of the biggest theories I got for this is I think Clive is the one that writes the book and the post credit scene under Joshua's name, and as I feel like Clive essentially survived it, like he surpassed Ultima, and he's no longer like he's beyond Ultima, even with all the magic gone in the world, and he's sort of taking on Joshua's name, kind of like how he did with Sid, and sort of like chronicle all the events. Because the thing is too, like the beginning of the game, it starts with Clive kind of like narrating. Clive says the first word in 16, and at the end of the game, he says the last word. So it's like he really has. So I think him being kind of like a chronicler makes a ton of sense, really, in theory, in a sense, because I've even brings up in the cutscene that he used to read a lot of books and his father encouraged him to read. So I was like, yeah, I think that all checks out really well. And it's before 16 like even came out, I was thinking to myself, I wonder how the ending's gonna be like. They'll end it in modern day, but like it just Clive in modern day, just hanging out with his friends. Nah, I'm joking, but to cap it all off, I genuinely think the story of the 16 is probably one of the strongest in a very long time. Like I I'd probably go as far as say this is on par with FF10, at least for me when it comes to like emotional way, because this game really hits the feels in all the best ways possible. But yeah, that's all I really gotta say on 16. I didn't want to like make a really long-winded answer, but hopefully this helps. Yeah.
What about you, Justin? How do you feel about the story?
I will preface by saying that they actually have gone on record to say that for the development of 16, that the team, I'm definitely sure most of the writing team had to order the entire box set of Game of Thrones. So if anything felt super fucking familiar, there's your answer. Yes, they watched Game of Thrones while making this game and writing the story. It fucking shows. I too watched Game of Thrones there, CBU3. I can see what you're doing. Still a better story than Game of Thrones. Oh, but yeah, when I saw that this game was going to be rated M for mature, I'm like, wait, this is the first time it's happening in this franchise, and it is, and it shows. And I'm like, this, it when done well, there could be so much potential for like this plot thread, that plot thread. It's like, yes, it's fucking working. There's just more showing the brutalities of the world they live in, just the lengths that some of these fucking like just assholes in power will go through to get the power they want. I mean, just the things that I forget the Empire's name, but the things they do to some of the fucking like, to the people for sure, like the things they do to the kids, what they did to freaking the Jill like during the fucking time skip when she awakened the power of Shiva, she was fucking used as a weapon. Just shows how asshole these people are. Fucking these fucking characters. Like oh my god, you feel for Clive when you play through that entire section of the game where you go back into the past and shows what his life was like before things went to shit. You fucking feel for the guy, and then you see what he had to go through years later. It's just like, damn. Kind of it just kicks you in the fucking teeth. There's not much you can do about it because, especially the way that the bearers and the oh god and the branded, the way that they're fucking treated in the world, you just you just really hate like just what are done to them, how they're treated, and just the way that people are conditioned in this world to treat the bearers and the branded, and just how much in danger the branded are in because of the ink used to make the fucking brand. And I like that they go into that, and you really feel for some of these fucking people, even some of the more minor characters that you meet to the side quests, some of the other longer staying characters. Like, I love this incarnation of Sid, especially. He's such a good like mentor figure, like to Clive when he really fucking needs someone like that. I'm sad I forget the other guy's name, but like the one that gets his fucking eye cut, like after Hugo fucking rips through the goddamn base like first second time skip. Gav, Gav grows so much as a fucking character, especially if you like do some of the other side content. I love that. I'm like, I don't know who this is, but why are you so cool by the end of it? The way he's such a right hand to him. Oh, like I didn't expect it, but this dude is freaking great. Karen the shopkeep. Oh my god, if that isn't a realistic depiction of someone who is fucking tired of people's stupidity, I don't know what is. And I'm sorry for forgetting the blacksmith's name too. Blackthorn, yes. Thank you, Andre. The pocket chef mentioned that Blackthorn. That's another dude who's just tired of some shit, like from some people's shit. But when you learn about like what he's been through, why he is the way he is, I'm like, oh my god, I feel for you, man. Same with Karen. I fucking felt for them when I learned more of their stories. That's how you get me to fucking care. It's like I know some of it is side content, but I mean the game thankfully does encourage that. And it's like, yes, this is how you make me care about minor NPCs. Oh, and Sir Wayne, oh, you make me care about him too. Why? Why do you do this to me, writing staff? Like, how are you actually doing this shit? You're making me care more about minor characters in this than Game of Thrones actually had fucking happen. And it's all enhanced by the performances of all the cast. And they really fucking did it so well. Obviously, it's not fucking perfect. Yeah, I'll give it that. No story's ever perfect, but the things that they did right just fucking show so well. Yeah, the characters that they want you to love, they're gonna make you love, regardless of what the hell happens. The characters they want you to fucking hate, the ones they want you make you can't stand, like, oh, Lady Annabella, like what was her name? Annabella, Lady Annabella. Oh my god, they make it clear from the start. They want you to fucking hate that bitch. And believe me, even to the end of that arc, I fucking hated her guts. They were so well at making sure we want you to hate them. There's not much redeemable. We're gonna show it. We're gonna be full force. We're not gonna hold back, and they did not hold back. So I would especially love if future games in the franchise kept the age rating, because it could open up so much avenues for telling this part of the story and that part of the story. And hey, and to all the freaking idiots on Twitter, no, not with gratuitous fan service. No, there's just so many themes, so much stuff you could tackle in a world if you're just allowed to have that age rating. And they fucking did, especially with what I mentioned earlier with just, I mean, I'm gonna just be straight with straight trope. War is hell. It is fucking hell. Just everything that happens to these people in this world. I gave a shit. By the end, you gotta do a lot. You gotta do a lot to give a shit about like the world's characters, no matter how minor. Everything about it, especially towards like the fucking last act of the game when Primogenesis is invoked by Ultima, and now all that ether is starting to turn innocent fucking hamlets and villages into Akashic. So like, and some characters, especially, you knew something happens to them, they become fucking Akashic. Like that the fucking dude and his sister who ran that service in that one fucking hamlet. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, for the little time that I knew him, he was a pretty fucking cool dude. Like, he just wanted the best for his fucking family. I'm like, that's fucked up, man. Like, this world is so screwed, and by the end, I just wanted to get better. I want something to happen to where, fucking, like, Ultima's wish is just freaking flat out just becomes roadkill. The highs were very high, and with more refinement, with more ironing up the kinks, I would love a similar script, similar themes. Obviously, like, do what you got to do for that same exact world. But fucking hell, just the things they did were amazing. And if I can actually point something out that Andre did real quick, I do love the active time lore, where you could keep up with events, character profiles, and the lore of the world in general. More games need to do that. We already have like the bestiary, like in some games we have that. That's great, but we need something like that, like the active time lore with I forget the teacher's name sadly again, but also with the bookkeeper Hippocrates, like with his stuff. I love that. More games need to fucking do that. More RPGs need to do that, because a lot of them are bigger games with bigger worlds with more to see, more to do. Sometimes you just take a bit and then you gotta come back, but you're not gonna remember everything, especially with like when worlds have such deep lore. Please, like, people take some fucking notes. And that's what I have to say on the matter.
All right, my opinion. Okay. All right. Go. So my opinion on the story is that it feels okay. It's like a giant, full-on war, and families being affected, and seeing the ramifications of that in this world it's really a great mature story, showing that consequences, death, that it actually means something. And I was invested throughout most of the experience. My gripes on it were like very minor, but still I was like super invested into what was going on. Seeing Clive just sort of grow and understand, and also not understand all the stuff going on around him. His relationship with his brother was also, kind of, it was cool, but it was also sad in a way, with the fact that he got sick and he's trying to, go out of his way, do his best. He thought his brother was dead the whole time, and then he comes back. And so they really take these moving pieces and they sort of just make you resonate with them, whether what's going on with the village before there are these harrowing events that start to affect the entire economy of what's going on. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that once again there are some plot beats that I thought that were simple, as I said in the podcast like sort of group chat. I kind of saw the Hugo thing coming from a mile away because I was like, oh well, of fucking course, after this whole fight with Benedicta, he's gonna have this whole revenge arc to him. We have to fight him later. And lo and behold, with the dominant thing and thinking, oh, it's like, oh, now it's Sid. It's like Clive said, oh, I killed her. It's like, well, yeah, you pissed him off. So here we go. We're gonna start fighting. And I just thought that it was fun leading up to those events, even though predictable, just how they were doing a lot of this plot and the characters you get invested into. You're going to see their character arcs and you're going to like them, whether it's like small screen time or big screen time. You know, I would consider Sid not standing around like much, like Andre said, but at the same time, when he dies, you feel it. You feel that shit. It's like as soon as you see the stab, I'm like, oh man, here we go. The blood is on the ground and everything, and then you feel bad, and then he just accepts him and he takes him, and then he goes into Clive, and it's like, okay, I enjoyed this plot thoroughly. The only thing that I had an issue with was just some of the, and this is probably what the active time lore is, because it's really good for any points that you may have missed out on or you might be confused with the relationships of the characters. And honestly, after a while, it's pretty straightforward, but I didn't like just a lot of the, and I know it's needed to establish this new world, but I felt like there was some exposition where they were trying to set up that wasn't as intriguing as what was going on with the main characters. Like I felt like some of the side characters and their role and everything could have been a lot more fleshed out, as opposed to, you know, some standing out in particular, others not really, just a couple of farmers you talk to that give you some dialogue on this certain town. And I understand that it's needed because world building, but still, I don't think that all of it was interesting, but I did enjoy the forward progressing plot of Clive and the gang, and I thought that was pretty cool. So it's definitely, like Justin said, that Game of Thrones style story where family, you walk into a village and family's like just fucking dead on the table. I'm like, okay, then you're not expecting it. It comes right out of nowhere, and it has a lot of those elements where it hits you with a gut punch and you know it's coming, but you're not ready for it. So that's what the plot mostly starts to set up, a rising tension between the war going on in the city and how the iconic people and dominants respond to Clive in a very vicious manner, and even the world itself. So there's a lot of consequences and repercussions in this plot that you're going to see the more it goes on. It gets like very prevalent in the third and second acts. Like you're talking about the literal destruction of a lot of civilization here. Like I said, I hope that this sort of mature storytelling for Final Fantasy starts to come back into fruition a little bit more in later sequels. Not that like this should be the standard going forward, but just the idea of death and consequence being that thing where it's shown in a lot more of a gritty manner. It's very fucked up. Like Andre says, it's a very fucked up thing to witness, and I hope they go into this direction, whether they turn this into like a sub series like they did with a Final Fantasy 13, where they made their own spin-off chapters after the fact. I think that would be pretty cool to revisit this world yet again. So I'm going to move my answer to Shug. What do you think about the story, plot, characters, and the thematics of Final Fantasy 16?
I thought it was interesting. It was something different. I want to say, like, not really, at least from the Final Fantasies that I played, nothing really matched up to what the story for this one was. You know, especially with the fact that it tackled slavery. You know, and a lot of. I liked how they made the crystals the enemy in some way, you know, and it's something that you see in some Final Fantasy where they kind of worship them in terms of like their this mystical power, and yeah, they kind of worship them in this one, but it was more of like they're still killing you in some way. And normally you never see that kind of stuff in Final Fantasy where the stuff that is worship is killing you, you know. And I found that so interesting with the crystals are pretty much one of the bigger parts of the enemy. And it was just very interesting how they changed that. And in terms of characters, I think Barnabas was pretty interesting. I kind of wish we had a bit more of him instead of him kind of just popping up randomly in Act 3 as soon as you start chasing after him. I kind of wanted some more backstory from what he himself gave us, or what the lore itself gave us, and but I think overall he was one of my more intriguing characters. I liked him. I like Dion. Dion is like a tragic character, 100%. Especially with the fact that he accidentally killed his father, and I wanted to say at the beginning of the story, whenever all the shit with Clive and Joshua happens, I instantly said, that motherfucker is not dead. It's like, he is Phoenix, he's gonna rise, the Phoenix never dies. And so, until it happened. But I kind of I like how the fact that they kind of never really gave us like a Phoenix down kind of deal in this game too. So it was kind of interesting. But yeah, like whenever they said, "Oh, we're gonna pretty much just kill him off in the first hour," and it's like, yeah, that motherfucker ain't dead. I was like, that's who I always guessed was the man in the shroud the whole time. And another thing, Sid. I think Sid was a wonderful character. I think he was pretty interesting. He was a good mentor. But I pretty much gather off at the beginning that it's like, this motherfucker's gonna die at some point. I don't know when, but he will die, and I'm not gonna like it. And I didn't. I kind of got angry at that he died, and I was like, that was probably one of my characters. I love Ralph Ineson. I like hearing his voice. So kind of just like him only being for like a good small chunk of the game, kind of just like, damn, I kind of want to hear more. He's a pretty good actor, and I enjoyed his character. I enjoyed Dion. I think Dion is probably one of my favorites. And Barnabas. I think Barnabas was one of those enemies that you kind of either try to feel bad for in some way because of how his upbringing was. He's pretty much got his mind poisoned by God himself and his own parents and family, and it's just like it all winds down to how the religion worked in that game. So like you do have a lot of religious points in the game itself too, besides the slavery that they kind of just slavery theme that they kind of forced upon some people out of nowhere, especially with the main character Clive, and how they treated those people or how they used them. They were pretty much cannon fodder. So I think that theme is probably one of the more hardcore ones that they had. Especially religion itself was another one of those themes that nobody really messes with. And I liked how they did it in Final Fantasy. I think the fact that these icons were pretty much part of its own religion in some separate ways in these countries. So, and the fact that Leviathan is one of those that kind of lost in time. That's why they call them the Lost. So I think it was interesting how they did those and how they were worshipped in some way before we got to the time Clive is in. But yeah, I think the themes itself very interesting. I like that. I like how they went with them. I hope they do more in terms of how they tackle some of these more mature themes compared to how they done beforehand. And yeah, I think I love the way that they did the summons this time around in terms of how they explained them and how they were how their power comes from from the specific family, and it comes from these family trees or whatever that they are adopted by the people. So I think I for sure want more Final Fantasy to go in a mature kind of direction in terms of just storytelling. I think it needs it, and it's one of those ways to. I think this was a good game to start it off with, and I think that they can do an even better job with it, because these teen love story bullshit needs to end. In all honesty, it kind of gets just like So this one was a really good way of just slapping us in the face with reality in some ways. So I like that.
Flash, what about you? What did you think of the plot and story details of Final Fantasy XVI?
Well, I've been holding this joke in for about a few months now, but with Final Fantasy 16, and it's obviously we've gotten a very obvious racism allegory, but I will say better than David Cage could ever do. Sorry. Fuck you, David Cage. But Final Fantasy 16, it's handling some very, very dark themes that would usually be passed off on social media and would like be talked down to. But I feel like it keeps holding those themes together all the way through, and they keep them strong. Even in the DLCs, some of those themes stay there. But it's mainly going for new themes. But overall, the content of the story from the beginning tragedy to the ending tragedy, it's all filled with tragedy. I believe I said in the open chat on the podcast, that Clive's mother, Lady Annabella, I had said that she was a very awful person. But when you look at the full context of that scene, the manipulation that Ultima has caused upon this world for so long, it is hard to look at anyone as purely evil other than Ultima. Just the fact that one being could cause so much hatred is what strives players to kind of want that person gone. And there's some very, very dark moments, some very unsettling moments. The side quest where this father that you come across, asks you to please hurry, save my boy, he's being attacked by a wolf. Only for you to kill that wolf and the child to immediately tell you that you're like, what have you done? Like, what have you done? That's my dog. How could you kill it? I'm going to tell father. And you look at two dead bearers who have been just hunted for sport. It's sad. And then you confront the father and child. They try and gaslight you into saying that you aren't the bearer I hired, only for Clive to pull the intimidation factor. And the fact that all of these people who treat bearers like less are so preoccupied with holding this power that when a bearer themselves holds said power, it scares them. And it makes their true colors come out. And I feel like that's perfectly in line with the story they want to tell. I cannot tell you the amount of satisfaction, though, as the implications of that side quest's ending are satisfying. I won't say what they are because it's morbid, but it's satisfying. And overall, the side quests really add to this world. They really give you an idea as to what the people think about these bearers. All the way from the side quest I just talked about, the side quest where you're looking for the pet of a little girl, and it turns out to be a bearer turned to stone. Then the slaughter on the church, all of these horrific things done to these bearers. And it makes you feel, it hits you hard. It makes you confront messages that you wouldn't confront in your everyday life. And just to experience that in a $1 billion franchise like Final Fantasy is refreshing. It opens people's eyes to certain things. The allegories in the game are very, very close knit. They're not constantly telling you, here, take this hammer. Oh, take the claw side to the back of the head. Like, not that hard with the messaging. It's remaining subtle in its own universe and tying its own folklore into the messages they want to portray. And all again, going back to the icon boss fights, the uncomfortable opening that ends with Joshua being torn apart by Ifrit, who we don't know at that point is Clive and I guess Ultima combined at once somehow. I don't know. They don't really bring that up again with the hooded figure from that scene. But it's very uncomfortable watching that as Clive, helpless behind Ifrit's eyes, can do nothing but scream and demanding that I'm gonna fucking kill you to whatever he's witnessing. Even some of like the badass like collisions with these titans, with these icons, they get uncomfortable because you know that this is harming plenty of people. Like it's not bringing closure to anybody. Kupka's entire reign of terror caused because the love of his life beheaded by Sid. It's tragedy all around, and I think Final Fantasy XVI uses that to its effect to tell the story they want to tell. And the story is that clinging on to your past and clinging on to the normal is only going to bring more pain. And just letting the past consume you. That was all Clive's journey was about. He let his past consume him. The guilt of letting his brother die, as he so put it, was tearing him from the inside out. Just see the falls of families, Odin's kind of weird descent into madness, straight up being mind fucked by Ultima. There's no one good, but there's no one bad. Everyone has their flaws and everyone has their hardships, but everyone is capable of being good. Except for Ultima. Fuck Ultima. And fuck David Cage one last time.
I knew that was gonna be said. All right, so we're moving on to question number 6. Is there any constructive criticism that you may have about this game, whether it is storyline wise or gameplay wise? We're gonna start with Andre first.
Criticisms. I have a couple. Well, I don't remember it. Well, I don't have too many, but I kind of wish you went to more towns in the game. That is one minor gripe I did kind of have. Like, I kind of wish you can go to, like, the Sandbreak capital or go to, like, Oriflamme. I really wish you can go to the cities because, like, if you look at the concept art for the game, I was like, I really wish you could, but for what we got though, it's not the worst thing because I think like 16 is a really gorgeous looking game. Like just all the areas just look really beautiful and just especially like taking all those photos. Kind of wish there was more RPG elements in the game, like because I feel like the combat, like elemental spells and stuff like that, but because I don't really do a whole lot with the magic, like it feels pretty basic. I sort of get what they're going for. It kind of feels like the guns in Devil May Cry. They're just, the charge shot stuff like that. It didn't really go all out with it. That's one. I want to say the lack of endgame content. I kind of wish there was, an extra dungeon or boss, but DLCs thing, well, not much of a criticism because the DLCs are going to fix that, or at least going to fix that problem, at least from what I've seen of, like, Echoes of the Fall and then, like, the upcoming Rise of the Tide, so, yeah, but, I don't really got too many flaws. with this game. I'd say maybe like the game's pacing is a little off in the third act, but even that doesn't detract too much from the experience, at least for me. Uh, yeah, I guess that's really about it on flaws.
Justin, what about you? Any flaws of the game you want to point out?
I would say so. Sorry about that. So I mean, definitely, I will say that after Bahamut and after Ultimate invokes Primogenesis, there definitely was like enough, so much good in that to show the themes of the world as we discussed in the last question. But I will say the pacing did feel a little bumpy, like just a bit. In some parts, it just felt like they were really trying to get to the end of that to a degree. It's just, where are we going? Because by the time I got to, before the final battle, I'm like, oh, I'm here already. What the fuck? It's like, what just happened? I went through all this, but at the same time, it feels like it wasn't in no what. It's weird. It's you have to experience it a bit in order to understand what I'm saying. And Andre mentions helping Mid out with the ship. Oh my god. Yeah, there you go. That's actually a decent thing that's to bring up, is the fucking ship part. I can understand wanting to fill in some of the time, but that quest could have had its time just cut in half just a bit. If only just because of how all where you have to go. Like, to do this, do that, all that shit. I mean, thankfully, it didn't drag too long. Also, why the hell does Mid just look like a freaking fantasy version of Ashley Graham? Anyone else think that? Like, just I don't know why. I just got the way she looked, the way she fucking looked, just like Ashley Graham. I just had to ask that real fucking quick.
They call her mid for a reason.
But what if it was based off the remake version?
Then I have to call that peak.
But I mean, I would just say just odd, pacing issues here and there. But I mean, other than that, the story just, man, there's so much to say about the story, because I feel like a lot of that was covered in the last question, especially with some lore bits needing to be more forefront rather than just supplementary or implied. My criticisms constructively just go more towards the gameplay. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel like it could have been a little bit faster, and I still hold to that. I still feel like it could have just a bit more faster than it was. It wasn't terribly slow, but it could have been a bit faster. It could have had a couple more combos. Could have utilized that jump button more, especially for those combos. Because if you had the DMC combat director, why was there aerial combat could have been so much better and so much more emphasized? Because the combo potential, especially in aerial combat, oh my god, would have especially been so freaking good. Because isn't it crazy how a lot of the craziest combos you tend to see, little more than half of them tend to be in the air? Could have done more with the magic too, like Andre mentioned, because it felt like it's like you're trying to chip down some health while you're keeping your distance, okay, but could have had more than just bits and charge magic. Could have had Oz and Gaz and Zaz and all that shit. It closest it really got was with Bahamut's Mega Flare, or some of the other moves, which, and they're not bad, but could have done a little more with that. And could we make the next time they try and do this kind of thing, could they make the level ups matter a little more in terms of stats? It feels like they were trying to go for traditional RPG combined with Final Fantasy IX in that regard. And in FF9, levels only mattered for the sake of certain other things, but it did not matter at all in terms of stats. Stats all mattered in FF9, all based off the equipment. And that was okay for Final Fantasy IX, because the game was very much more built around that. But 16 tries to be a hodgepodge. But at the same time, though, some things just kind of hit really fucking hard for that. And even with some of the better equipment, because I looked for every chest, I crafted pretty much everything, because I did pretty much every fucking side quest available at the time. And the materials you get, you can always craft some of the better equipment, like the best weapons, best accessories. better armor. But again, I feel like the stats meaning next to nothing every time you level up just kind of hold it back a bit. For all I know, maybe it could make just a little bit of a difference, like how plus 10 potency to a fucking move in FF14 somehow makes that one move better, and that's all they could do until the next expansion because they gotta fucking drag that shit on for 2 years. But oh god, I get that the game is a lot more linear, especially compared to other Final Fantasy titles, but I would really like at least maybe one or two like major areas that weren't just a straight line with freaking trash mobs and shit. Because I'm just like, oh wow, it's just like 14 Slater dungeons, where a lot of those were straight lines with trash mobs and bosses. I know a lot of the side pieces were dynamic, and that's usually the trying way they make up for that shit in both of those games. But I would at least maybe one or two where you had a little more than just straight lines. But again, at least the combat was pretty fucking good, so I'll give it that. But just something to consider. And oh, could we pace the side quests better at endgame next time? The side quests, like as they become available, are all right throughout the game until you get to the end. Until you get to the end. The intent was all there. I see exactly what they were trying to do. They were trying to do what Xenoblade 2 Torna did, where like they had all these side quests in front of your face to make you give a shit about the world, to make you care about the characters. I'm down with that. The problem was the placement. When before you get to the final battle, you will definitely be known that if you go to this prompt right here, you're going over there, so do what you need to do. So what do they give you? They give you about 1, 2, 3, 4, carry the one about like I think I counted like 18 different side quests at that point in the game, just all opening up. You get like double digits worth of side quests, and doing them throughout the game is proven to get you some good stuff, like good weapons, good equipment, good accessories, good this, good that, money, everything. So you want to do them, but there's so many of them, and you got to keep running to talk to them, and there's no damn sprint button like in the hideaway. So when you got to take quests in the hideaway, you got to keep going, and you got to run. And like Clive, god damn it, I wish you'd run faster a little bit when you're in the highway. Your speed out in the outworld is fine because you have sprint or you have ambrosia to freaking ride on to freaking speed things along, but you don't got any of that in the highway. You just have freaking Clive's Zone 2 freaking puppy legs. Freaking, like, don't skip leg data. It's because it'll bite you in the ass. But oh my lord, just so many of them. You couldn't have like given me half of these like in like a couple hours ago and given me the other half and the rest. And there are more that open up after you do certain other side quests in this exact same sequence of side quests. I have no problem with what they were trying to do because some of these quests are genuinely very touching, especially one with Jill. Towards this part of the game, I love that quest. I think it's genuinely very touching. I'm just like, oh, I'm like, that's sweet. But holy fuck, they could have paced these out a little bit better. Just next time you have all these quests you want to do for freaking really make you especially give a shit about the world before you're going off to face the most dangerous battle of your life, space them out a little bit better. Because if you're gonna have so many of them straight up in your face, just taunting you, holding them up like freaking teasing a freaking pair of keys to a cat or a dog. No, just please, just space them out better. That's all. That's what I gotta say about that. Just, if they do that, then I wouldn't mind if they did that again. Again, making me care about the world, I'm all for it. But just please respect my time.
All right, I'm gonna go next. My criticisms are kind of minor, but they do exist. It goes back to what was said earlier about there needing to be more combos. I do agree with that. Like, after a while, you are just doing the same sort of combo string. I mean, the econs, they kind of come in and they vary up the flavor, but you're still kind of doing that same move over and over. So I wish there was more variety there. Same for I think the RPG elements were a little bit too streamlined and way too simplistic. I kind of wish ailments came back because it was weird when I was fighting in a battle and I got poisoned and it only knocked me out for like 2 seconds before I got up and started fighting again. And I was just kind of like, okay, in a normal RPG, I would have been poisoned and I would have took gradual damage, and I might have needed like an anti sort of poison or antidote to get that off me. The fact that I was knocked out for 2 seconds just was like, okay, is the game registering that I'm poisoned, or did I get put under a sleep spell? I don't know. But it was one of those minor gripe things that kind of bugged me. So I wished ailments were back to make the combat a little bit more dire. If you got hit by certain attacks, you would have to use your antidote to really remedy it, which is, you know, it's standard. It's par for the course. It's what happened for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth when they were putting you to sleep. The motherfuckers were putting you to sleep or poisoning you, and you had to take something in order to get rid of it. Otherwise, your party members or yourself would suffer throughout that entire skirmish. What else? I also feel the same about the side quests. Some of them are just simply filler, like needing to take someone's dog somewhere or something, and then you get like a trade or something, or they give you some gil, and that's it. Like the ones where you're doing like errands with no real merit, I could have kind of done without. The story ones are kind of cooler. I just wish it was more of those as opposed to just running around and giving someone something and that's the end of the mission. So they could have varied that out a lot more. And the final criticism I have is the same one that Justin has. In the little in-world hub where I'm trying to run to get to a location, why is Clive's legs like not even working? Why can he not sprint to the location? Because as they get bigger, that's exactly what I noticed. I'm trying to get to one end of that hub area, and I felt like I spent almost 2 minutes getting to where I need to go, which is a fault of the speed of the game. So I like in the bigger areas outside, he can run around, do all the stuff, sprint, ambrosia, but this is like, oh man, I got to slow jog all the way to the next end of the location. This is kind of boring. That's the only thing that really bugged me about the game. Everything else is kind of fine. It might be like bits and bobs here that they could have fixed. Like I said earlier, I think the econs could have been their own weapons, and then you could have got like more weapons to toy around with and do combos with and switch, just like DMC. But overall, I do think the combat system was great enough. But everything else beforehand bugged me a lot more than what I brought up before with the econs. Shug, what about you? What is your opinions on this game and the criticisms behind it?
You know, like I said earlier, the combat for sure I think would be better if they added more combos. I think if they give us like, you know, a combo list helps. You know, many people like to do combos. Many people like to fuck around with the game and test it out and do these practice modes and whatever and just figure out how the game works. I think if they had done something with the combat itself in terms of combos and like combo lists and like you know, I wouldn't say buying the combos like going full blown, you know, Devil May Cry, Bayonetta kind of deal, but you know, the fact that you come with them by default, but I want them to, you know, I guess feel something, and it kind of just felt like I said earlier, it's like you're fighting a sponge. It takes so long to kill something at points, even with the abilities or even with the strongest sword at the time and before New Game. It just doesn't feel like you're doing much damage at all, you know. So I feel like they should definitely like do something about the combat, not fix it, because honestly, it's good. It's just I want more in the combat. I want more movement from the character himself instead of just slashing, you know, left and right. The magic, it was kind of pointless. I'm gonna be honest with you. Just pressing right trigger to throw some, you know, some spits of magic was stupid. I think they should either give me full blown magic or just don't use that at all. Honestly, I want to say the story. You know, just keep it up with the themes. I love the heavy themes. I love the goriness, the fucked up themes. I think it's something that Final Fantasy needs. I really do, and this game really just did it. You know, and it was amazing. I think if they improve on more of these serious themes, I think these games will evolve even more than this one did. So story, again, it was good. I really don't have much to say about the story. If we're going for combat, of course, more combos and all this kind of stuff. Where I want more. I think I want more variety. The weapons, like I think it was Ren that said you don't do poison, you don't do stamina damage, you don't silence, you don't you just don't add any of this, and it's just pure damage. You don't do any freezing damage, you don't do any fire damage. You're fighting bombs and you're throwing fire at them and they're not growing. And it was like one of those things that kind of bothered me, because you always get used to fighting the bombs and you're like, oh, don't throw fire to these motherfuckers because they'll get powerful. So I wish the more of the old game mechanics in terms of just elemental stuff, all the affinities. I want those to come back. I think those are always more. I think they're important to these types of games, especially an RPG like Final Fantasy. It's very important to have, and I like the fact that you can use them to strategize. And if you're gonna give us spells, give us some spells that just involve the shell. Instead of just being a little spit of fucking thunder or ice or whatever. Make us actually use other types of spells like shell or anti-venom, whatever the hell. There's so many spells in Final Fantasy that could be just used for defending yourself. So it'd be interesting for them to add more of that stuff, and I think they kind of missed out on it. But again, it was something new, and I think they're just they went safe with the combat a little bit, in terms of making it as it normally is. So I 100% love this game, and I think it was almost perfect. I just it just needs some of those minor fixes that I think would have helped it even more.
Flash, it is your turn. Any constructive criticism about Final Fantasy XVI?
Oh, I don't know. So, I'll just go out on a limb and I'll say it right here. Well, I'll just go out and say it right here. It was my game of the year. There's not much wrong with it, in my opinion, other than some combos. We need some more combos. On top of the music choices, I felt like someone said in the chat, if you asked your composer to give us more music, he would have done it. His music was just, they limited the way that they could have used boss fight music and continued certain tracks that begin those boss fights in the cutscenes. I feel like we could have had a lot more dynamic music in there, kind of like how Doom 2016 or Devil May Cry 5 with you can always constantly like revert these tracks to different parts of the song based on the player's gameplay as well. Like kind of like how Final Fantasy VII Remake uses its boss fight tracks. A great example in Final Fantasy VII Remake is One Winged Angel, where any part of the song, wherever you first get into the next phase of Sephiroth, it will gradually transition to the next part of the song flawlessly. You could have created a great piece for every semi-primed character boss fight, and each phase could have been linked to its own part of a new song. And of course, the combos, we got to talk about the combos. Again, more could have been done there. But other than that, I mean, it's hard to criticize a game that you really like and a game that has so little flaws to you personally as much as I've put into it, which is, let me see, 143 hours. After 143 hours, you're not going to find much to criticize if you're committed to playing 143 hours of one game. So that's just my take on it, though. Maybe someone else has a different opinion, but we'll see.
No, I think we all sort of got that one out on the last question. So I think we're gonna move on to a question where only I think two people can answer it, and that's the DLC Echoes of the Fallen. We're asking if people played it and what are their general desires from the rest of the story DLC, like Rising Tide when that comes out. We're gonna go with Justin first.
Yeah, I'm like one of the two that played the DLC before this. But my thoughts on the DLC. So, I mean, I will say straight. So they were blatant about where the DLC's placement was in terms of the overall plot. That it is one of those things you can do in that big lull before the heading to the final sequence. So that's where it's placed in the story, pretty much. Uh, so that in mind, I still had separate expectations for what else they were going to place in terms of just overall gameplay content. So, Echoes of the Fallen, it definitely showed a different part of the lore of 16 that I completely part of me didn't even think about. It's just like, right, that fucking like the typical RPG ancient race that's all died out before the times that you live in, sort of thing. Because there's always, like, 9 times out of 10, there's always got to be that ancient race where their tech was unmatched. Everything here just seems super hyper advanced by the time you live in. It's unbelievable, but all the people who made it are fucking dead. Gee, it's like the Alligans from FF14. Who would have thought it's the same team? No, but seriously. And the way it segues into it is, I mean, I personally like it because the person you go to even initiate the quest, honestly, it makes perfect fucking sense. And what happens to lead into all these events still makes perfect sense. I'm trying to not say too much because I know that some people do want to play the DLC, and that's on an entirely different league compared to the base game story, just in terms of certain things. But some of the things that you explore in the place where you end up going to in Echoes of the Fallen definitely leads some different thoughts of the world and what happened before in the ancient past. Some of the things that happened there. I and by the end of it, I was just like, Jesus, because I'm gonna say this also right now. I don't know if it's just because I'm not. I will say I'm not very good at 16. I will not say that I'm like a freaking all-out god in it, but I felt like the difficulty was like a fucking huge spike. I feel like some of those fucking enemies just like hit me like a bitch. Just like for all this damage, these mobs were freaking insane, and the fucking, oh my god, and the mini bosses especially fucking just like it's like I took the last cookie out of the jar. It's like, damn, calm down. I only have so many potions to go through. Jesus. And then the last boss sequence. Oh my god. I will say this. As a set piece, cinematic as hell. It was fantastic. Music, soaking, you freaking god. This is some good shit. But man, I'm gonna say this: like that last phase felt like it was like a freaking planned boss for Final Fantasy XIV that they just put into 16. There was so much shit here. I'm just thinking, oh my god, all these things just seem literally like a thing you find in 14. And for a single player game where you don't have to worry about 7 other people's freaking asses, and you have your own heals compared to the 2 other healers right there who may or may not give you that freaking one critical heal you need that's between the difference of life or death. The thing that really especially gets me was I still feel like the camera was a little too zoomed in these sections, because some of these fights, you have all these waves and all these freaking magic gonna freaking kill you circles, and the camera's a little little too close. It could have been zoomed out a bit more for mainly those attacks, just so I could see what the hell's going on. I know the intent was pay attention, and I'm fine with that, but I need to zoom out a little more so I can see the rest of it, so I can at least see the safe zone. Can I at least have that? I'll pay the freaking attention. I'll look around all you want, but give me a camera where I can see more of the field, because some of these safe zones get so small by like later fights, and by this one, especially with the redacted over here, just trying to freaking make me a goddamn bitch, where he's trying to all like that, just trying to really fuck it right there. But would I still recommend the DLC? Yeah, definitely. I'll still recommend the DLC. It's still a lot of the same gameplay that you know of from, like, the rest of the game. It's just like, it's just please make sure you're wearing some good equipment before going in, because it will still freaking test you. This, I feel like they made it with the biggest assumption that you've already played this game at least once. A lot of people who got this DLC already beat the game. I can get that, but this is why difficulty selections are still a norm in gaming. It's like, come on, if you want to make something this more hard, this much of a kick in the ass, can you at least make it a separate option for someone to get their freaking dick kicked in? This is not Sonic Frontiers: The Final Horizon. Like, Jesus, we're trying not to go that route again, guys. What I'm hoping for, Rising Tide, had its own, it has its own set of expectations, because we all know what's going to be in that. We all know it's going to be Leviathan, and from the trailer there was a difference. So it's going to be another kaiju battle. I just hope it's as good as some of the other kaiju battles we got in the game, because there's still those high standards that we got from base game. So I'm going to be keeping that in mind. I hope for some more godlike soak-in music for that Leviathan track, and I expect just a better balance of difficulty, because if y'all saw the trailer, you know what else is going to be in the Rising Tide section of the DLC besides Leviathan. The little, let's say, a big ass knife just getting ready in your future, just ready to fuck your shit up. And if it's especially anything like it was in 7 Remake, it's gonna be a kick to the teeth. But I still expect a lot of good things from the Rising Tide, because all in all, I still had my fun with Echoes of the Fallen. And may I just say, good lord, these titles sound very, very CBU3, because these sound like Final Fantasy XIV story patches. And it just keeps showing. It's like, hey, do you know it's the same devs? Because we're going to get all prolific on your ass. But again, I still have a lot of high hopes for this remaining DLC pack. And hey, whatever cool powers I get from Rising Tide, I hope to have a lot of fun with, because that's just going to be even more combo utility. So, fingers crossed.
All right, Slash, it is your turn. What do you think of the DLC for Echoes of the Fallen?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I've been going back to look at the DLC, and initially I was like, "Oh, it's the best DLC ever made." As I go back, I see a few problems with it, namely charging $10 for it. No, I mean, it's $10 for about 2 hours of content, and I mean, that's about how long, 2.5. That's about how long it took me to fully 100% it. I have I think every trophy in the DLC except for the Final Fantasy mode, beating the final boss of the DLC in Final Fantasy mode, which I'm never gonna do, because fuck that. That is no, absolutely not. But it just has a few problems here and there, namely story-wise, that I can't get into due to spoilers. But there's just some decisions in there that I'm not fond of. Not fond of where they went with some things regarding some of the main game side story that they do capitalize on, that they're using to build the ground for this DLC. And most of it was good, but there's that one little thing in there don't like. Can't talk about it though, because only me and Justin have actually played this DLC. Pros: the final boss was really great. It's a long one. It's very long. So expect a tough one, a toughie too. As well as it's got an abundance of like mini bosses too. It's got a lot of little mini bosses leading up to that final boss. There's no really new gameplay improvements. And if you are going to go into this game and you've potentially started a new game plus, and you want to, oh, hey, this new DLC just came out. I'm going to pay $10 for that. All right, now let's go and play it. Be aware, you cannot play this DLC until you get to Origin. The final fight. Complete everything in the game except for beating Ultima. Then you play the DLC. That is the only way to unlock it, as far as I know. I was using my level 48 with everything done to get through that DLC, and I still only crossed about 2 levels trying to do that. The score, I felt like they really capitalized on where they were taking some of the fallen pieces, as the fallen are a very common thing in this DLC, and I feel like the musical set pieces they used in certain fallen sections of the main game, they really advanced those with the score in the DLC. The new weapons, I really like the new weapons. They're very powerful. I genuinely thought the Gotted, I do not know how to pronounce that, otherwise known as the Ragnarok. Those I thought were going to be the best weapons possible in the entire game. But no, the DLC comes in and says, yep, there you go. Have that. Have fun. It's like, I'm going to go back to another Doom reference, but it's like in Doom when they just hand you the shotgun and they just tell you, have fun. That's really where it is, because I've tested out that weapon. It is powerful beyond no measure. If you thought the final sword from the main game was powerful, boy, you have seen nothing yet. I felt like they really capitalized on creating some new enemy types as well. Some new enemy types based on old enemy types. There are some new variants of old enemy types, and they're very good variants. They're very well designed variants. They play the same. I do hope that the Rising Tide kind of evolves on that with Leviathan and the one-hit wonder over there. I'm very much looking forward to that. I can't believe we're having to wait till spring 2024, is it? I think.
Yep, you are correct.
For that. Jeez, you scared me. Whew.
I'm like a ghost. Sorry about that.
Yeah, spring 2024. Good God, that's way too long for me. I'll have forgotten about it by then. Also, I wish they had announced this instead of, at the Game Awards. I wish, same with another games DLC that I won't speak of for spoiler reasons again. I just wish it was revealed ahead of time so that we knew what we were getting into, because it didn't seem like they had releasing a trailer for something and then dropping it like the day of. It's to me it reeks of inconfidence. If that's a real word, I don't think that's a real word. It doesn't reek of confidence of what they're trying to put out there. But the thing is, there is so much good in this that I don't know why they didn't have confidence. This should have had end of the world build up. This should have had more build up than fucking Final Fantasy XV's DLCs. It just, because there are major story beats in this. that are necessary to end out everything. They are tying up loose ends in these, and I don't get why they're not advertising it as such. I hope that the Rising Tide gets better advertisement as we go on, but knowing where Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going, considering the DLC's coming out at least a month or two after Final Fantasy VII Rebirth releases, I feel like all their marketing is going towards that game. So it'll be sad to see that DLC probably not pull in as many numbers as Echoes of the Fallen probably did, but we'll see. It's gonna entirely depend on what Square wants to do, and I just hope they keep their heads on straight through this.
All right, we're heading into the final question of the night for Final Fantasy XVI, and it's a simple one, and it's about ranking where the game lands compared to the other Final Fantasy games. First, we'll start off with Andre. Where would you rank this game compared to the Final Fantasies that you actually played?
I rank this as the Final Fantasy play. That is a very good question. Oh, it's hard because it's tough, honestly. I want to say this game is like it's up there with like FF10 for me, and maybe I guess yeah, because I haven't played like 1 through 9 in a long ass time. I've never played 12. So yeah, maybe up there with 10, 16. I think maybe if I play more FF games, I'll probably do like a tier list someday. But overall, I would say like 16 is very high up there for me.
Justin, it is your turn. Where would you rank this versus the other games you played?
I mean, I played quite a number of Final Fantasy games. To put it simply, I would put it like quite high up there compared to some of the other games. I'd put it pretty high up there, like with stuff like, I mean, I'm just gonna give just one example, like say 7 remake, or like, freaking some of the remasters of like 4, 5, 6, all that stuff. I just think, plain and simple, it's a really freaking good game. It's also a really freaking good Final Fantasy game. Haters be damned. I do honestly think it is a very much worth time and money, and it should definitely be experienced by a lot of RPG enthusiasts, especially ones who maybe if you're not in the Final Fantasy, it's a good fucking starting point because you don't got to know shit about Final Fantasy to play this fucking game. It helps, but you don't have to, and that is also a damn good thing. Whether you get it for this freaking big hunk of like white interchangeable plates over here that was next to impossible to find for 2.5 years, or you're gonna wait for the PC version because I don't know, you want to freaking go to Nexus and find some unsavory stuff or whatever that do you, then that's also fine. I say it's a pretty high tier Final Fantasy game. I will die on that hill.
I only play like a real handful of Final Fantasy games. I played like 7 OG, then 7 remake, then 8, and then I played a little tiny bit of Final Fantasy X. And I also I think I played a little bit of Final Fantasy VI as well. So I have a small handful of games that I played in this series before. I honestly would put this, it is up there. I probably would put it like up there, but one step below remake in terms of gameplay, but as an overall game, maybe to go like above it, because I always am the person where it's like I need like maybe 2 opinions before my sort of ranking will change, and that usually is involved with a second playthrough. But after that, I don't think it's gonna change much. I think it's a very well made game, with a few shortcomings here or there, but I do want it to be the standard of like mature storytelling going forward. So uh I would put it up there. Also, I forgot to mention I played Crisis Core as well, because I remember we did that podcast like not too long ago. Yeah, it will certainly be over that as well. A lot of the other sort of games where it's like um they didn't really hit a full potential despite being good. I feel like this is one of the rare few that has, but it's still in that experimental phase, which is why I don't put it over 7 remake, because I feel like 7 remake just had the ideal combat going on, as well as, obviously I'm biased to like the old 7 gang, because that was my first Final Fantasy, which is why I put that up there very high. But still, this was a very enjoyable experience, really, and I hope that the other DLC, Rising Tide, is pretty good. Actually, that'll justify me getting the bundle. So that's where I would rank it. What about you, Shug? Where would you rank this game for the Final Fantasies that you played?
I'm gonna catch a lot of flack for this because my list is very thin, or thinner than most. Um, so I will put this game in at least in a list of maybe top fives. I will put this game on the second place, mainly because I consider the first Final Fantasy that I ever beat like the best. It's just mainly because, my opinion, as the first one I ever beat by myself, no help from anybody, and it's just I loved it. And it's Crisis Core. I think Crisis Core will forever be one of my favorite Final Fantasy experiences. And like I would only just put it second, mainly because it's just my first game. So Final Fantasy 16 was an amazing game. I loved it. It's probably I want to say maybe the fourth, maybe the third game of Final Fantasy that I finished. And I love 13. I know everybody hates 13, but I love it. It's one of those that again I beat it by myself. So 13 and 13-2 are there for me just because I beat them by myself. I grew up with these. And so, like, maybe sometime in the future, I will try more of the older games. I've never played them myself, but I watch people play them. So, like, I know what to expect, but 90% of them, I'm too scared to go too far back in terms of the combat because I know I suck at them. So, yes, I will eventually play more of them. Will my list change? I don't know. Maybe. But I think so far, Final Fantasy 16 is one of those that you could probably compare it to some of the greats, and I think it's there. It's like almost on par with one of those greatest Final Fantasies out there. So while I wouldn't put it at number one in greatest, but I would put it to where a good top 5 of the greatest Final Fantasy games out there, and I think it's one of those games that it was really good for a first try in terms of this scale, So really enjoyed it. I think it was almost perfect, and I kind of wish it was nominated for Game of the Year. Would it have won? I don't know for sure, but I think it's one of those that I really enjoyed, and I would love to play again. And I normally don't do that, and it'll make me probably want to play more of the older ones. I own them all, so I could eventually go back to them at some point.
Flash, what about you? What is your opinion, and what would you rank this game compared to all the other Final Fantasies that you possibly played?
Well, I'm just gonna go out and say it. This is in my top 5 Final Fantasy games. That's sitting alongside 7 remake, Final Fantasy 12, and Final Fantasy 10. Don't judge me. I grew up with 12. I have bias. But 16, I feel like, is going to represent a new era of Final Fantasy that I think can prosper. Again, personal game of the year. I said this earlier, but I'll reiterate it again. Personal game of the year. I will answer the question before if Final Fantasy XVI, if it was ever nominated for Game of the Year, if it would have won, absolutely not. Baldur's Gate 3 had a grip on the world for 6 months, or however long, whatever. um, but nothing will change the fact that this was one of the breakout games for me that I did not expect to be as good as it was. I was expecting a lot of games to be really good. You know, Spider-Man 2, I really expected that one to be good. Alan Wake 2, I really expect that one to be good when I get around to playing it. Just many great games this year. And I just hope when we come out of this podcast today, Final Fantasy XVI will just earn its flowers again in the coming years. I truly believe that will happen. We see this all the time with media where it comes out, it's praised to high heaven. It gets a resurgence of this game's fucking dog shit or this game's mid, and then it goes back to this was glorious. But you know, we'll see what the public really thinks about it, and I think they'll react very strongly to it. So, yeah, personally, I 9.5 out of 10.
All right, we are done with this podcast. It's been a fun night, just sort of breaking down and doing our own analysis on Final Fantasy 16. Once again, shout out to the panel for coming out, enjoying themselves, and having a great time. We're going to do our sign outs now. So, Andre, on social media, where can we find you?
You can find me at Twitter, Andre B Venom. You can also find me on YouTube, Venomous B Andre. Yeah, I recently got a laptop and at least like a gaming laptop, and I'm probably gonna set it up tomorrow. So yeah, that's looking forward to. Definitely gonna be streaming more, so looking forward to that. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. Fun podcast.
Justin, where can we find you on social media, buddy?
Well, firstly on Twitter, just winking at Elon as he freaking has a re in the corner over there. At Inferno Dragon 3D. Don't be surprised if you see me retweet some of Ben Starr's memes because the dude can have that shit for days, and I don't mind any of it at all. Better say, Ben, keep it going, because mine's bigger. And also, you can also find me on YouTube and Twitch at Inferno Dragon 343.
You can find me on X, or my god, I hate calling it that, but you can find me on Twitter at rentoperative_. You can find me on YouTube, Renegade Operative. You can find me on Twitch at Renegade_operative. The only video I'm going to be working on is probably some RE4 stuff, because I know I promised a review and I said that I was going to get to that swiftly, but you might see some Resident Evil content. Definitely, I kind of want to talk about the subject of if remakes should be nominated for Game of the Year, because I know that was a hot topic and I want to give my opinion. So you might see that sometime tonight, so just be on the lookout for that. Next, we're gonna go with Shug. Where can we find you on social media?
I can be found in Twitter, but I normally am not active there, at Sugar Bastion. On Instagram, Sugar Bastion _, and YouTube and Twitch at Sugar Bastion. Normally, I work with doing walkthroughs, so there's plenty of those. I normally don't do reviews or anything, but you know, it's something to watch, at least me play games and suck at them.
Flash, where can we find you on social media?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at the Slasher of 78. You can find me on Twitch under the same name. I'm recently deciding on going back to streaming soon, so keep an eye out on that. And I also have an Instagram, the Slasher Fanboy. Just keep an eye on some more content, on some more updates there on where I'm going with that Twitch thing. So we'll just see what happens. So yeah.
Alrighty. So we are signing out for this podcast. It's pretty fun. The next, whenever they do Final Fantasy, next Final Fantasy obviously is going to be Rebirth. As I said, I'm going to try to give people like 1 to 2 months, preferably 2, to get through the bulk of that game, because they literally said that that game is going to have 100 hours of content. that's going to take a while before we get to that discussion, which is why I sort of said that. So it makes perfect sense. After we've delved through everything we needed to do with that game, we will definitely talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm very heavily hyped for it, and it just feels good to be a role-playing game fan and having so much content come out, like, burst out in the beginning of the year with that and Persona. So we're looking forward to it. I know you're looking forward to it, and we will see you guys next time. Later.